As we cast our gaze upon the current state of our civilization, it's impossible to ignore the unsettling feeling that we get witnessing not only its unraveling, but also the potential fading of the torch we were meant to pass to the next generation, the very legacy of the West. We find ourselves adrift in a cultural landscape that no longer resonates with our essence. Certainly, I'm sure many of you feel the same way I do, that you feel like a stranger in your own country. At times, I can't help but wonder if maybe the flame of the West is now on the verge of going out. And if so, how can we stop it? And why exactly is this happening? Liberalism and wokeism have completely reared their ugly heads. Many, myself included, feel as though they're really starting to show their true colors now. It seems that they don't want to build up our civilization. They only seem to really be able to and want to break it down. In 2016, obviously for everybody who would find themselves on the right today, would say that this was a pivotal point where you notice that things are not heading in the right direction. And ever since that point, we've all been scrambling, trying to take all of the broken pieces that are our civilization and put them back together, or at the very least try to preserve what's left. Amidst all of this destruction, it really makes me wonder if maybe things have spiraled so far out of control that we can't turn back now. I mean, when Biden took the presidency, a lot of us couldn't help but feel a sense of powerlessness, as if we had no institutional influence, and that maybe we were left without any real means to make a difference. And so, speaking for myself, I realized that I would have to turn my attention elsewhere if I were going to be useful. We can all tell that this isn't working, but despite that, the NPC continues to move forward with the program. Even though critical race theory or feminism and all of the horrible things that they teach kids in school now are obviously very bad for our civilization, the Biden administration too is continuing to push these ideologies and these ideas, despite them being absolutely horrible, as though nothing bad is resulting from those ideologies. These new developments are so non-life affirming and confusing that it's even expressed in the way we are depicted. Like in images of flat design, we're undefined, all the same, seemingly with no roots at all. Don't you ever get the sense that we're experiencing some sort of collective amnesia? When you look at these images, it's hard to deny that this direction we're moving in feels so lifeless and dull. And what's more unsettling than anything else is the fact that so many people are fine with this lifeless direction that we're heading in, and we're taken along for the ride. not only that, but we're also being forced to abandon our past and our origins along with them. As a former fine arts student who had studied classical painting in college, the contrast becomes particularly evident to someone like myself. When we look at how we are portrayed in the past versus how we're portrayed now, it becomes very apparent that something essential has been lost. Reflecting on the promises of these woke ideologies, which initially appeared well-intentioned and meant to promote progress, well, we can see that we aren't moving forward. In fact, it seems like we're regressing, and that our new direction is draining to the soul. So, given all of this, why are these movements and ideologies so compelling to people, despite us being able to prove that they're destructive and see for ourselves that they're destructive? How could one be so persuaded towards them themselves, bringing about their own demise in the process, and even the demise of their civilization? It seems logic and reason fail us here at convincing these people to change course. So, what's going on here? Why can't they understand what it is that we're saying? Is it simply a reluctance to confront the harsh realities of our time? A state of complete denial? Or is it something more insidious that's at play? I think straight away, when one wants to try to solve this issue and figure out why this is happening, you would think that most of these issues stem from politics and that you should put your focus there. And so people often tend to think that politics itself is where the battleground is. But I don't think it is. I think it's something else. If you want to solve our civilizational problems, you have to get down to the root of the issue. And in my opinion, that's culture. During my time at art school, I was told that Western tradition and fine art was now irrelevant, and that the concept of beauty was almost embarrassing. As I observed these shifts, I could see the seeds being sown for the eventual rise of progressive woke ideology in our culture, which would later make its way to the mainstream. It was through witnessing this progression over the years that I began to grasp the profound impact of culture on politics. As the culture shifted, so too did public sentiment, and then the voting patterns. And so this made me realize that it's not culture that's downstream from politics. It's politics that's downstream from culture. When you look at modern media, anything that is telling a story of who it is that we are, it's a far cry from how we used to express ourselves in old paintings, sculpture, music, etc. Where we once had a specific identity and direction, and where we used to value beauty, nobility, and generally speaking, healthy, well-balanced characteristics and values, now none of those things are present. In fact, what's now being communicated in media is that all of that was a lie, and in fact was unhealthy. And of course, you and I know that that's not true. On the right, I think we definitely have a tendency to undermine the power of art and music, in that we fail to see how it's able to persuade people very easily to move in a particular direction, culturally speaking, politically speaking. Or at least this has been going on for quite some time now. We have truly dropped the ball when it comes to this arena. And I think it's due to the fact that so many people on the right tend to see art and music, movies, as purely entertainment, or more often than not, see it that way. And so, generally speaking, we have largely ignored the realm of culture, and this couldn't have been a bigger mistake. Allowing these crazy woke leftists to take over the realm of culture essentially means that they have taken over control of storytelling. And this is truly detrimental to our civilization, because by getting to be in control of narrative, especially at that emotional of a level, they have effectively been able to communicate to our collective that we are the villains in history, even though that's not true. By changing our collective perception of the past, by making us feel nothing but shame about it and about who it is that we are, or by replacing us where we once stood in our own stories, almost like reprogramming, they can make us hate ourselves. And no amount of logic and reason can convince an NPC that they shouldn't hate themselves, or that they shouldn't hate us as a group of people, because the stories that they get these emotions from are so deeply ingrained with them. No amount of logic and reason is going to be able to undo that storytelling, which is hitting them on a deep emotional level. So, is it any wonder that we're forgetting who it is that we are? By controlling the realm of culture, the left can inspire us to be what they want us to be, and where they believe we should go next, which is obviously not a good place. Our loss of identity is intrinsically tied to the lack of interest in preserving our countries and who it is that we are as a people. The left seems disinterested in safeguarding traditional art and our culture in general, and so too our heritage. If we don't step up and take an active interest, the flame of our collective spirit, nurtured by art, music, ancient philosophy, and even religion, risks fading away. These cultural elements act as a binding force, a kind of glue holding us together. When we encounter modern art that appears geometric and soulless, it's not a sign of progressiveness, but rather an indication of our spiritual frailty and a collective loss of purpose. In essence, what I'm trying to convey here is that many ignored the issue of our collective identity and how it affects lawmaking or the way that people vote. When people arrive at conclusions about what it is that they believe and what causes they want to support, it's not because they looked at graphs and were looking at statistics, it's because they saw something in a movie that influenced them and persuaded them to feel the way that they do. They vote the way that they do because they are pulling from emotion. It's these deep-rooted stories that they were told as children that are affecting and clouding their judgment. And that's exactly why an NPC could care less if this country falls apart. Because they have been convinced that it's the people who created this country that are evil. If the true stories of our ancestors' past were told, and we truly understood our identity, not this horrible one painted by leftists, our path forward as a group would become a lot clearer. And much of this confusion and destruction would stop. If people truly understood what they were destroying, recognizing its beauty, they would see how truly valuable it really is, and that it's very much worth preserving. But of course, this cannot be done via logic and reason. It's something that needs to be felt. To maintain an alliance to one another, or feel compelled to keep the torch lit, we need to truly comprehend the profound depth of our connection to our grand story that is connected to our ancestors' past, in which we all play a vital role. So now that we understand that our culture is also an issue, not just politics, and we have some sense of the depth of the issue that we're dealing with here, and that art and music are worthy pursuits, what are we going to cultivate now? How do we nurture the tree we all seem to stem from? And how do we find our deepest roots and truest essence? Of course, this is a big task, and there are communities online which are wrestling with these issues revolving around our identity and what it is that we used to believe and what we should believe now, given everything that's happened throughout our history. And while I do appreciate a lot of the work that's being done in these communities, I feel as though much work still needs to be done. And it's because there are so many possible answers here as to who it is that we are and what our true story is. And people tend to be very reactionary in these communities when it comes to the subject matter, which honestly makes a lot of sense. But because our past is so clouded in mystery, and also because there are so many philosophical quandaries and religious ones too that one must contend with along this path, I just think that we need to take it slow and not be too hasty. So, should we simply return to the 1950s in America and rekindle that culture? Do we delve into medieval history and shed light on the essence of chivalric culture? Should we revisit ancient Rome and Greece, grapple with the issues raised by Friedrich Nietzsche, and ultimately finally choose between a more Apollonian cultural approach or embrace the Dionysian? Is Norse mythology the most authentic reflection of our collective identity? Or do our roots hold even deeper mysteries, waiting to be unearthed that have never seen the light of day? And now that we understand how culture informs our collective identity and how important that is, and that it's vital to fixing many of our societal issues. I think it's important to understand that simply returning to the past, I'm afraid, is not really the answer. Or rather, that it's just not that simple. Of course, that's a very healthy sentiment coming out of these communities online. So I think that's a good thing. But in order for us to truly understand what happened and why our civilization is at the point that it's at right now, you really do have to contend with the philosophical underpinnings revolving around this issue. Otherwise, we're doomed to make the same mistakes again. Figures like Robert Hughes, Carl Jung, Roger Scruton, even older ones like Richard Wagner, Nietzsche, Evola, and even Oswald Spengler, were all tackling issues relating to metapolitics, which is at the core of everything that we've discussed. So looking at these figures is crucial. And this is why I've decided to collaborate with Arktos, who focus primarily on metapolitics themselves. They actually translate and publish works by many of the great thinkers I mentioned previously. They focus on edgier material, so, stuff that hasn't been properly translated into English, that left-leaning publications have basically censored through the translation process. So it's their mission to give people in this community properly translated works. And so I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate their website because they feature a lot of really great articles on a variety of different topics relating to our history and just general philosophical quandaries. So I would definitely recommend checking out their website and looking at the books that they have to offer. So a big thanks to Arktos, and also thanks to everybody watching this video and for tuning in all of these years. And I'll catch you guys next time.